Hello and welcome. My name is Michelle with Phoenix Flow Art. So this week I decided to create a beach scene. I've never done that before, so it did not go as planned. However, I did learn a lot, so I will explain what actually happened throughout this video. So I'm using 3 colors to create the water. The colors I'll be using is alcohol ink by Jacquard. It's called Mermaid. Bombay ink, it's teal, and the Color Obsession dark turquoise paste. And those will be what I create my ocean with. And then I'll be using white sand. So here I am pouring out small bits of resin in these Dixie cups. And I'm going to be working on a 5x5 framed out panel. Now I don't know where I got this panel from. And when you do this, especially if you're doing it the first time, you shouldn't use one that has a frame on it because you want the resin to go over the sides. So my resin got a little bit thicker or pooled because it couldn't go over the sides. So the first color I'm using is Mermaid. The more pigment you put in it, the darker it gets. If you want it lighter, then you'll have more resin, less pigment. Or in this case, ink. So here I'm just mixing up the colors, trying to get them the shades that I want. And my ocean is going to be, the closer you are to the sand, the lighter the water is. The further back or close to the horizon line, the darker the ocean is. So it's going to be a variation of color. So this Mermaid is the lightest color I'm using. My mid-range is the teal. And I wanted the teal a little bit darker, so I added a little bit more resin to it, and then I added more pigment or ink. And it only takes a drop. Started out with 1 drop of the alcohol ink, and then I added a second drop, and the same thing with the ink, 1 drop. Then when I wanted it darker, 1 more drop. So they're highly pigmented. And this last color is a dark teal. A dark turquoise. Then I'm going to take my hand, I'm going to mix the colors up a little bit because I don't want hard lines. And this is multi-layered to give it more depth and dimension. So this is my first layer. So next I'm going to add clear resin after I bust these bubbles, and then I'm going to add my sand. Now I'm going to put clear between the color and the sand because I don't want my sand to turn green or the color of the ocean. So this sand I'm using is powdery. The next time I do this, I'll be using sand that is more gritty like sand. This is more powdery, more like mashed potatoes instead of the grit of sand. But for the purposes of learning, it works out fine. So once I have this base coat of sand and my ocean down, I let it dry. And then I come up back for part 2. In part 2, I will add my first wave. So after this dried, I went back and put another layer of the Mermaid and Teal. So I only used 2 colors. And then I go ahead and proceed to create my wave. My wave did not come out the way I wanted it to. I forgot to, after you create your wave, you're supposed to come in with the torch to create lacing and bubbles. And I did not do that. The torch actually helps break up the wave and creates the lacing and allows cells to come up. Now I'm laying my white down for my wave. I'm going to separate the white from the wave and the color with a little bit of clear resin, and it'll also help my wave to move across the substrate. So I'm getting my heat gun, I'm warming up all the resin, and then I'm going to start focusing on blowing out the white of the wave. Now at this point, I still should have gotten my torch and torched it to see if the lacing would have occurred. However, I didn't. So I let that dry, and I'm going to make one more wave. So this time I'm just using teal. Now again, you don't have to use a colorant to create your wave. You can just, I could have just used clear and then just used the white. I just chose to keep building up layers of color. All personal preference. And I don't think the first wave's horrible by any means. It's just, it needs some work. So I'm going to do the same thing for my second wave. I'm going to lay out the white, and then I will blow it over. Also, another reason why, and until you become really comfortable with creating ocean seas and waves, you don't want to have it framed, is so that if you do have too much resin on the substrate, it can roll off. Mine didn't have that option because of the wood around it. So I'm heating up the resin, and then I'm blowing it out, the white out. So because my resin didn't have anywhere to go, I think it rolled back a little bit. So I think it's more cloudy than wavy. That's just my personal opinion. But at least this time I did remember to go ahead and torch it. So again, I'm going to try this again, but here's my finished results. I'm not totally happy with it, but I learned a lot. So I'm going to try it again and hopefully get a better result. Again, my name is Michelle with Phoenix Flow Art. Creating is what I do.